My name is Emily Longtail. I turned 26 this year. I started dating a coworker, Jason, and we got engaged and married. At that time, because we had asked the executive director and his wife to give a speech, everyone at the workplace knows about our marriage. After getting married, I quit my job to become a full-time housewife. One day, while I was on a phone call, my husband, not knowing it was a video call, snatched my phone. "You're watching videos again, huh? You're supposed to be a servant," he yelled at me. "Hey! Give it back! I only took it away because you don't do any housework and keep watching videos. I don't want to do this, but it's your fault for acting like a servant and not doing any housework." My husband kept blaming me for having the phone taken away and continued to berate me. My husband used to be a very kind man. My husband is 4 years older than me, and I thought he was incredibly cool, maybe because of the age difference. Although he wasn't my direct senior, we didn't talk much until a drinking party where we ended up sitting close and started having various conversations. That's how we became close. On dates, he would take me to various places and say warm things like, "I'll always protect you." I decided to marry him, thinking I could be truly happy with him. However, after our marriage, my husband changed drastically. "Be grateful I made a woman who can't work a full-time housewife. You can't live without me, so just quietly do the housework, and you're a servant." I hear this almost every day. My husband has a good public image, so when we go out together, he acts like a perfect husband, but at home, he turns into someone who constantly berates me. When we're out, people often say things like, "You have a wonderful husband," or "You're an ideal couple." My husband seems to enjoy these comments, pretending to be modest, saying, "Not at all," or "I can't let my wife carry such heavy things." He would only carry my bags and play the good husband when we were outside. But when I get home, I always get scolded, "Be more friendly," or "Not being nice to the neighbors is a failure as a housewife. You can't do anything, neither your job nor housework." I get scolded for how I act outside, so no matter how kind he is when we're out, I'm always nervous. I live in fear, wondering what I'll be scolded for next when I get home. There was a time right after we got married when I fell seriously ill. I had a high fever and couldn't do any housework. When night came and my husband returned home, of course, there was no dinner prepared. I had told him I was sick, but by the evening it got worse, and I couldn't even inform him that I hadn't made dinner. "Dinner time, wake up!" My husband woke me up, and I felt a glimmer of happiness, thinking that although he had never cooked before, he might finally be showing kindness because I was feeling unwell. I said thanks and went to the living room, only to find nothing prepared. "Huh? Didn't you say it's dinner time?" "Yeah, that's why I'm waiting." "What?" "I meant it's time for you to make dinner, so wake up." I was heartbroken, having expected that he had made dinner, but he only woke me up to cook. The disappointment hurt even more because I had hoped for better. With a fever over 103 degrees Fahrenheit, my head was foggy, and I didn't have the energy to argue. So, I quietly made something with what was in the house. My husband hates takeout or pre-made meals, insisting on homemade food no matter how sick I am. I couldn't go shopping because of the high fever, but luckily, there were still some ingredients left in the fridge at that time. I made dinner while feeling dizzy, only to be scolded, "What is this meager meal?" I always say to prepare a well-rounded meal. Well, I'm kind today, so I'll let it slide. But if you keep this up, you're failing as a full-time housewife. You can't even do what you're told, worse than a part-time student worker. Being scolded after struggling to cook was too much. That's when I decided to stop expecting anything from my husband. I told myself to just quietly obey and everything will be fine, I'll have money and I can endure it. No matter how sick I get, I never receive any concern. Instead of being worried, I get scolded. "You're always sick. Don't you know taking care of your health is part of your job? How do you even catch viruses when you're always at home? You overreact just for a fever." Even when I'm ill, I get blamed, and I still have to do all the housework as usual. So now, I don't even tell my husband when I'm feeling unwell. I often regret why I'm still with such a person, questioning my past choices. My husband had a crush on me even before I started liking him. At company parties, he would intentionally sit near me, as he later told me. My husband was the one who asked me to go out and proposed. Yet, he always talks down to me, saying he did me a favor by marrying me. I was already reaching my limit of being treated like a servant. Then, it happened when my phone was snatched away during a video call. The call was still connected after my husband took it. My husband thought I was watching videos, not realizing the conversation was being heard by someone else. Knowing my husband always pretends to be a good husband in public, he would be devastated to know others heard our conversation. I silently endured my husband's berating, thinking to myself how this entire conversation was being overheard. Once my husband calmed down, I said to my husband, "Anything else you want to say? Have you said it all? Look at the screen." I wasn't watching videos. My husband turned pale seeing the phone screen. "Jason, I heard everything," I said. The person on the video call, who was the executive couple. My husband has always lived pretending to be a good husband and a good boss, not letting anyone see his true nature. The fact that the executive couple, of all people, witnessed his true self must have been a shock. My husband, who had been loudly scolding me just moments ago, turned pale and stuttered, "Why, how?" He was speechless. "What happened? You were so loud with your wife just now. Why so quiet? Say something. I'm disappointed to see you change your behavior so much depending on who you're with." My husband became even more flustered after being told that by the executive. He looked around desperately, trying to think of something to say to the executive, knowing he needed to cover up the situation.
Why is the executive calling? Why are you calling Emily? Why would someone like you call a regular employee like her?"
My husband was in a panic. When the executive and his wife gave a speech at our wedding, my husband kept saying, "They agreed to give a speech for someone like you, a regular employee, all thanks to me." The executive is my uncle, my father's brother. I finally revealed the truth I had kept from my husband.
"What are you joking about? When they gave the speech, they even said, 'Nice to meet you.'"
That's because the executive was hiding the fact that he's my uncle. Sorry for deceiving you like that.
"We really put on a good show, didn't we? You pulled off the nice to meet you vibe. I'm so glad."
When the executive couple agreed to give the speech, they actually knew me well, but they pretended not to know me. My husband was completely fooled, so the executive and his wife were delighted their acting was convincing. "Why did you keep it a secret?" Being known as the executive's niece might have made others treat me differently. That's why I never told anyone. I passed the entrance exam and the interview on my own, and I didn't want to be mistaken for a nepotism hire. "But we're married, you could have told me." "Well, I was going to tell you after we got married. But you changed so much, I lost the right moment. You kept demeaning me, calling me a regular employee, a servant, so I thought it would be interesting to let the executive and his wife see your true nature."
"What do you mean by that?"
Since joining the company, I never let anyone know I was the executive's niece. Our families lived close and were very close-knit since I was young. We often had barbecues at each other's houses on weekends, went to Disneyland, and even traveled together. The executive and his wife, having no children, raised me like their own daughter. But I didn't want special treatment, so I never told my colleagues or Jason. When you asked me out, I immediately reported it to my uncle. I remember being happy about that. I didn't know who Longtail was until Emily told us. After you guys started dating, I frequently visited your department. That's why you were inspecting our department so often back then. We were all wondering what was happening. Really? Sorry about that. I was just observing what kind of person you were. So, you're saying the reason they agreed to give the speech is because Emily isn't your niece, right?
Of course. When I told Emily I wanted to give a speech, she opposed it, saying it would be suspicious for a regular employee to give a speech at a wedding. So, I decided to get closer to you, and when the wedding was approaching, I went to you and said, "If you're getting married, please let me give a speech." And as planned, you asked me to give the speech, and my dream came true.
And all this time, I thought the exec was favoring me. I was mistaken thinking it was because Emily is your niece. My husband always proudly talked about how the executive director agreed to give a speech because he saw potential in him. I heard that story so many times, I could have grown calluses on my ears. I've been told countless times, thanks to me, the executive director is giving a speech. But now, knowing it was all a misunderstanding, he turned red with embarrassment. The executive and his wife didn't sit in the family section at the wedding, so their relationship with me remained a secret. But uncle, you almost gave it away at the wedding when you drunkenly called me Emily. I scolded him for drinking too much, but he said he had to drink to keep from crying, his wife added. My uncle drank so much at my wedding to hold back his tears that he got drunk. When he called me Emily, I was anxious, but luckily, my husband was busy chatting with his friend, so it didn't get exposed. Despite such close calls, I managed to keep my marriage going without my husband knowing about the executive couple. I had been consulting with them about my husband's drastic change after our marriage. I didn't want to worry my parents, so I confided in the executive couple instead. I'm always grateful for their presence, as there are things I can't discuss with my parents but can with them. I thought about how to show them my husband's true nature. Knowing how angry my husband gets about me watching videos, I purposely made a video call in the living room to show them his real side, and the plan worked as intended. I confessed everything to my husband. He was astounded that he had been tricked. I was nervous when he took my phone, thinking he might see the screen. But he was convinced I was watching a video, so we didn't get caught. I was so nervous too, worrying we'd get caught. Even though I knew Emily was wearing earphones so the sound wouldn't leak, we both froze up, making sure not to make any noise.
You're sweet. Thank you for your help. With both of your cooperation, we could perfectly expose my husband's true nature. I had heard about it, but to actually hear Jason call Emily a servant. How can a man say such things to his wife? Even though it wasn't directed at me, just listening to it made me feel awful. Emily endures such terrible treatment every day. That was still the milder side. But sorry for making you feel bad. Usually, it's all day long like that. It's scary how he hides it and acts nice in public. No one at the company would ever think Jason could say such things. I'm sorry, she often slacks off on housework and watches videos, so I thought she was doing the same today. I was harsher than usual. Calling her a servant isn't my true feeling. It's just Emily exaggerating. We're usually very close. We do fight occasionally, but... My husband desperately tried to salvage the situation. The executive couple knew about the terrible treatment I had received, so Jason's excuses were futile, but he seemed determined to maintain his facade, denying that he always says such horrible things to me. He was telling a far-fetched lie, but the executive seemed to find his desperation increasingly amusing and played along, knowing it was a lie. So, you were being strict out of love? Yes. Tough love. You love her, then? Of course. I wouldn't be so strict with a woman I don't care about. I just want her to become even more wonderful, so I guide her strictly as a husband. You only saw the angry part, but usually, we're very close and in love. My husband rattled off, pleased that the executive seemed to believe him. I couldn't believe how easily he spun such lies. But it was entertaining to see the executive teasing my husband. Then, the executive started asking Jason more probing questions. So, you use the word servant for the woman you love? It just slipped out. It's not common for someone to casually use the word servant unless they really think it. I've never called or even thought of my wife as a servant. You're right. And you also said, I made you a housewife because you couldn't work? I remember Emily being capable at her job. She had a good reputation in the company. Didn't you want her to be a housewife so she could take care of the home? Did Emily ask you to make her a housewife? Jason was at a loss for words under the executive's questioning. I never said I wanted to be a housewife. I married you because you insisted on it, but you always acted like you did me a favor. I wanted to keep working. But you imposed your prejudice that women should stay at home, and I quit my job reluctantly because you wanted me to take care of the house. Yet, you claim as if you made me a housewife, which I couldn't accept. I answered the executive's questions in place of my silent husband. I had been thinking for months that I couldn't continue my marriage with my husband and had been considering divorce.
I secretly recorded all my husband's harsh words to use as evidence for the divorce. You've been trying hard not to be disliked by the executive couple, claiming it's tough love and that we usually get along well. Can you really say with certainty that it's not a lie? Do you seriously mean it when you say you love me? Of course, it's true. I was just irritated earlier, and I'm sorry for that. But we're married, so let's overcome this and become a wonderful couple like the executive and his wife, right? I've recorded all our conversations. We're a good couple, right? Then I can play this recording right now to prove it, can't I? I said this, and my husband hurriedly tried to stop me from playing the recording. Why are you stopping it? Well, it's embarrassing to have our private conversations heard. Despite my husband's request not to play it, I ignored his words and played the recording while still connected on the video call. My husband's face turned pale.
Hey, servant, I told you to polish my shoes. Why only this much food when I keep saying to make a full meal? Who do you think supports a useless servant like you?
As his harsh words to me were played, the executive and his wife, who hadn't heard these recordings before, were shocked. I didn't know it was this bad, to be spoken to like that every day. I never thought you would change so much based on who you're with. People are not always what they seem. When Emily consulted me, I told her to overcome these differences as they happen in marriage. But I never thought it would be this bad. I regret telling Emily to endure it. A man like you will always look down on women. It's your choice, but I want you to stop hurting my precious niece. Can you divorce her? The executive apologized to me for telling me to endure the situation. He pleaded for me to divorce my husband, as he believed a person like Jason would never change. However, my husband desperately resisted.
Please wait. You're right, I may have looked down on women until now. But after being scolded by you and your wife today, I've changed my mind. Can I have another chance? I don't want to be apart from Emily. Please.
My husband begged the executive couple on the video call, insisting he didn't want a divorce. My husband probably couldn't bear the thought of letting go of me, the niece of the executive couple. Marrying me was like grabbing an opportunity for career advancement. In fact, he was promoted after our marriage was decided. He was happy, thinking it was due to his abilities, but in reality, everyone was at the same level, so the executive recommended him. That's why my husband absolutely didn't want a divorce. But my mind was made up. I couldn't continue living like this and told my husband,
I can't take it anymore. Being treated as a servant by you. I didn't marry you to become your maid. I wanted to be a good wife to you, so I became a full-time housewife. I even attended cooking classes to make you happy. But you never thanked me, and when I got sick, you scolded me for not managing myself. I appreciate that you work, but a housewife works tirelessly at home. Why should I be scolded for that? It's ridiculous, isn't it? Please, just let me go.
I poured out everything I felt. I didn't realize I was pushing you that far. I'm really sorry. I'll fix my bad habits, and if Emily wants to work, she can. I'll also help with household chores. Let's start anew, okay? Jason proposed. What? Start over? That's impossible.
Your personality will never change, and I've lost any love I had for you after being treated so terribly every day. I deserve praise for putting up with such a terrible man for so long.
Let's get the divorce papers ready. I presented the divorce papers to my husband. It was the first time I had spoken to my husband in such a strong tone, and he was visibly disconcerted. My husband continued to resist for a while, but eventually, we agreed on a divorce. Later, I reported to the executive couple that we had divorced. Thanks for your help the other day. With your support, I finally freed myself from him. We didn't do much, but I'm glad we could help. You've really done well up until now.
You were so cool when you stood up to him at the end. That's my niece. So proud of you. Oh, if you're okay with it, would you like to work with us again?
I decided to return to work after being invited by the executive. Considering this situation, it was only a matter of time before my husband found out that I was the executive's niece, so the executive offered me the opportunity to return as his secretary. It turned out that the executive's current secretary had just decided to leave, and they were in need of someone to fill the position. Apparently, my work performance was well regarded within the company, and they assured me that I was not being offered the secretary position out of favoritism.
I wasn't cut out to be a housewife. I enjoy working and interacting with different people. Thank you for the job offer. I'll do my best as your secretary. The fact that you are talented shouldn't be wasted. I expect great work from you as our new secretary.
Meanwhile, my husband faced a significant demotion at work. Rumors had been circulating about his sloppy work and all talk, no action attitude. Although he looked competent and was articulate, his actions didn't match up. The upper management had been lenient with him because he was the executive's niece's husband, but things changed after the divorce, leading to his demotion. My husband repeatedly contacted me, begging for a reconsideration of the divorce. And he begged me to somehow stop his demotion. I have no intention of remarrying you, and I want nothing to do with you anymore. Also, I heard your demotion isn't because of the divorce. Isn't it your own doing? If you dislike the demotion, just do your job properly. I rejected him and then blocked all contact. For my proud husband, both the divorce and the demotion must have been humiliating. But it was his fault, and no one sympathized. Even when my in-laws, who had heard about the divorce, came all the way to our house to apologize, it seemed like they asked my husband about the fact that I was the executive director's niece. They came to request, "Could you please ask the executive director to at least stop the demotion?" However, I have no such authority, so their pleas only left me feeling troubled. In fact, his promotion was favored in the first place, so his current position is more or less appropriate. All I could say was for them to keep working hard. The executive accidentally revealed to a subordinate that my husband had been treating me like a servant, and the news spread quickly throughout the office. My husband was then branded as a man who mistreated the executive's niece and looked down on women, leading to a difficult time for him. Especially losing respect among female employees. Previously somewhat handsome and popular with female staff, he now found himself widely disliked. My husband was demoted and had to work under his juniors, which was frustrating for him. Meanwhile, I'm enjoying my days working hard as the executive secretary. It's far more fulfilling and enjoyable than my time as a full-time housewife. Despite my relation to the executive being revealed, my colleagues continued to treat me well, which made me happy. My husband had paid me a substantial alimony, so I planned a solo trip during the Christmas holidays. When I mentioned it to the executive couple, they suggested, "Let's go on an alimony trip with Emily's parents as well." Please don't call it an alimony trip.
While engaging in such light-hearted conversation, I savored the happiness of being divorced. Finally freed from a life of servitude, I am now enjoying my freedom.
I looked forward to enjoying my single life.